All right, awesome. So today's class is about submitting offers and negotiating. That's what we're going to talk about. So we're going to start with the process of how to submit an offer and what that looks like. So we're talking about today from the buyer's perspective as the buyer agent or the tenant agent, not as a listing agent. Okay, just so you guys are clear. We will touch on that a little bit. But truthfully, on the listing side, the offers come to us, right? So there's a little less process involved than on the buy side, although the negotiation will apply to both ends. So before I kind of jump into the content, we should be about 45 minutes today to an hour, with time for questions at the end, just so you guys know your schedule and your timing. But before I start, are there any specific questions you guys would like to cover, or specific questions you have about this topic in particular, about submitting an offer and negotiations, or something you'd like us to kind of touch on as we talk through the class?
Maybe Jen, you know, it's been a very competitive situation now, but maybe if you could touch in what changes when we're in a more normal situation.
Yeah, no problem. That's a great topic. And we don't know yet what the fall is going to look like, right? So the good news is the more normal situation is a lot easier, and quite frankly, a lot more fun. This market that we've been in for the base, well, for all of you since you got your license, has been a lot more challenging, especially on the buyer side, right? Now, the process for a buy is the same as a process for a lease when we submit an offer. The only difference are the documents that are required, right? So I'm going to treat them as the same thing, but obviously the documents would be different. For your lease, you would have your credit report and your letter of employment and all of the additional documentation that is necessary when you submit your offer. For a purchase, you don't need that stuff. You would just need your offer, your confirmation, your 801. And if you have a letter from the bank, especially in the current market, showing their pre-approval, that can be beneficial when we're negotiating, because it just creates a little bit more confidence. And we're going to talk about that a lot today, from the listing agent to you as the buyer agent. When it comes to negotiating, one of the biggest things that works in our favor, especially in a market such as the one we're currently in, is the confidence we can create around our buyer, right? So what story are we telling about our buyer? But let's start right at the beginning, because I want to make sure that we're all comfortable with the process from start to finish. So for those of you that have done this a few times, some of this might be repetitive or redundant. Bear with us. For those of you that are newer, take notes. This will be kind of a guide on what to do and how to do it. That being said, this is being recorded, so it will be uploaded to the YouTube channel and you'll be able to watch it back as well. Okay. So when we're putting in an offer, and I'm skipping past preparing the paperwork, full disclosure, guys, it's not a paperwork class. We did AuthentiSign last week. If you were there, awesome. If you weren't, the video, I actually think I still have to upload it, but it will go up soon. But when you're submitting an offer as a buying agent, there's a couple of steps you have to take before you even start preparing your offer, okay? Because you don't want to spend time on an offer that's not worth you spending time on. And I mean that respectfully, right? If they have a low number or something like that, doesn't mean you're not going to submit it. But there's things we need to look into and understand before we even start preparing the paperwork. So step one, I'm assuming at this point that if you're working with a client, that they have been pre-qualified and you know their budget, or else you shouldn't be working with them. And if it's a tenant, that they have provided you their credit report, their letter of employment before you were showing them any properties, or at least early on in the process. You might have shown them one or two before they got everything to you, that's fine. But you're not shopping somebody that you haven't qualified, right? That's where we start. If you can't walk into an offer and be confident about who your client is and what they're bringing to the table, you can't represent your client effectively, right? It is as simple as that. If I can't tell another agent what my client's down payment is, what their pre-approval amount is, who their lender is, if I don't have that information, I can't speak at a high level about my client. So I can't create that confidence that I want to create. So these are things you need to know as a buyer's agent. And you really should know these from your consultation, right? When you have your buyer consult, before you start taking them out, you should be asking these questions. If they haven't got pre-approved, you should be setting them up with a lender to get them pre-approved, right? So These are all steps. And when we do the buyer consult class, you'll learn how that process works. And again, there's videos and resources on that. However, that's where we start. So when you are submitting an offer, guys, step one is call the listing agent. Please call the listing agent, okay? And the reason for that is because you need information in order to prepare the offer, first of all. Second of all, you want them to know that you have an interested party, especially in this type of a market. You don't want to miss the opportunity to kind of get them to get your foot in the door if our offers come early. And thirdly, you want to feel the agent out a bit. Who am I dealing with? Is it an agent that's super chatty and giving me tons of information? Is it an agent who's kind of short and very aggressive? Is it someone who wants to work with me? How do I need to approach this negotiation? Right? So we're calling for multiple reasons, even though to them it should just seem like we're calling to get some information, right? The first thing we want to know when we call is, have you had any offers, or do you currently have any offers? Because if they're in a sign back to another buyer, you can submit an offer still, but it would have to be conditional on you would have to wait, sorry, not conditional, you'd have to wait out their other offer not getting accepted. So you'd have to give them a longer irrevocable, and they couldn't look at it until that other offer was accepted, right? Does that make sense to everybody? Right. So you want to know that. What position are your buyers in? Are we first to the table? Do we want to be aggressive on our offer and not lose that opportunity, especially in this market? Or are there other people already knocking down the door and we have to be a bit more competitive? So our strategy is going to be a little different, right? You can't prepare an offer if you don't know that. So that's step one. Step two is get information about the property, right? Are there any additional things I need to know about this property? What are the chattels and fixtures included and excluded? We talked about this in one of our group chats. I don't know if it was the PC one or the growth one, but we had an agent that had an issue come up because there was a water softener on the property that wasn't listed as a chattel included or excluded, and it turned out to be a rental item, right? So now what do? If we know what that list is, and we know what the rental items are, and we know what the chattels included and excluded are, we can be really clear and really purposeful in our offer. So you want to be asking those questions as well. What are the chattels included? What are the chattels excluded? What are the rental items on the property? And what are the amounts owed per month on those rental items, right? If the furnace and the AC are rented, is there a buyout? And what is the amount of the buyout? Because you might want the seller to pay that before you take possession. Which by the way, we'll talk about this when we have a class on structuring offers, but that's this approach. You don't want your client to assume a rental on a furnace or an AC. Hot water tank is pretty standard. Water softener is 50-50, but a furnace and an AC, traditionally, we want to buy an owned unit, right? So we don't want our clients incurring that cost, and it could impact their budget also. So if they're pre-approved as a buyer, and they're at the top end of their budget, and then there's another $100 in rental fee that you didn't know about, they might not qualify for that mortgage. So we need to know this stuff, right? So these are all the reasons we call that listing agent step one, right? We also kind of want to get a feel for, are you planning to, if there's an offer date, which we're seeing 50-50 right now, right? We're seeing some properties have, some properties don't, because the market is not quite as aggressive or strong as it was in the spring and even in winter. So depending on that, if there's no offer date, is your client available tonight to review my offer? Right? I want to get this dealt with as soon as possible. I know it's a good property. I know it's in a great price point. I know another offer is going to show up. Are they going to review it tonight? And this way you can have that irrevocable conversation. That listing agent's going to tell you, actually, no, I can't get hold of them until tomorrow. They're probably buying time to try and get a second offer. 100%. I do it all the time, right? It's a strategy. When you're on the listing side, we're going to teach you to do that in this type of a market. The reality is, as a buyer, there's not that much we can do there. If you have a really strong offer, like incredibly strong, firm, with a great price, and you want to try and push it through, you could put an irrevocable for that night. But if that listing agent wasn't bluffing and their seller actually isn't available, they're going to call you back and be like, I need till tomorrow. I told you that, right? And that's fine. You can try and read it and see what your expectation is. And you can ask as well. Ask as many questions as possible as a buyer agent, right? Are you expecting any other offers? Do you have any other agents calling you and asking you these kinds of questions? Feel them out. You'd be surprised what they'll tell you. Why are they selling? Right? If you want to find out if they've already bought another home and there's a little pressure there on that closing date, why are they selling? Not every agent's going to tell you, but ask, right? So the reason we're gathering all this information as buyer agents is because A, this gives us a better strategy to negotiate. It gives us a stronger foothold in regard to whether we have any power or not, which oftentimes in this current market, we don't, right? And it also gives us the answers we need to fully prepare our offer properly. And the reason for that is because when I submit an offer, I want that offer to look professional, to be completed appropriately, to have all of the right information, all of the right clauses, because I want my client to stand out. So first of all, basically no other agent, most of them, unless you're up against one of each other, is not going to be making these calls. So you already look better, more professional, and more prepared than the other agent, right? Second of all, you're probably providing more content with a letter if you have one from their lender and things like that. So you have more context. And third of all, the agent hopefully likes you, which means they're going to sway a little bit towards you if it comes down to you and another offer when they don't have any relationship with the other agent, right? So we want to look at that stuff. The next step is talking to your client about their deposit, okay? The deposit is required within 24 hours of an offer being accepted. There's multiple ways right now we can provide deposits. You can provide a bank draft. You can provide a certified check. You can wire transfer. You can bill payee. There's a lot of options. Bill payee and wire transfer, if you do it that way, that's great. It's nice and convenient through the banks and the lenders, but the money won't actually go into the account for 2 to 3 business days. So you'll get a receipt saying you sent it, and you need to submit that as well. Have a copy of that. Submit it to the listing agent to show them, hey, the money's been sent. And then their office on the back end will also get a notification that the money has been submitted, but it's not yet in the bank. So if you see that, that means at least you know, hey, the money's been sent, right? As a listing agent, if you have a listing and you get an offer and the money is sent by wire transfer or bill payee, do not change the status online. Do not put up a sold sign until that money is in our office trust account. And the office will tell you when that is. And it's traditionally it's 2 business days, okay? And that's okay with TREB because of the delay through the banking. So we're fine under the TREB requirements there, but do not do anything until that happens. Because if the funds aren't in the account and it gets rejected or there's an issue or a glitch, that money's not there. And now you posted a sold listing that isn't sold and probably put the sale price on it and exposed what your client's willing to accept, right? In this market, not as big of a deal because, of course, we have multiple people who want to buy our properties in low inventory, so probably not as big of an issue. But in a regular market, that could be a big problem, right? So until we have money in hand, we don't do anything with our status of our listing. But that's just a little sidebar. So before we move to the next part, I'm going to stop. Guys, this can be interactive. I can talk at you for the next 45 minutes. I'm fully capable, but I'd rather not. So if you have questions as we go or anything you want me to clarify, are there any questions about the first 2 steps, calling the agent and then making sure your client has the money for that deposit?
Yeah, so the deposit, okay, so if it's not the wire transfer, and could it just be a regular check or a still certified check?
It has to be bank draft or certified. It can't be a personal check.
Okay, so they would be able to just run over to the bank and get one.
Yeah. Yes, because everything's open now and everything's running a bit more normally, you can go in and get a certified check. You can go in, bank drafts are cheap, which is why most people do a bank draft. You can get the bank just to cut you a draft and go directly to the listing brokerage office and deliver it. That's immediate. That's fine because then they put that in their trust account and they have the funds automatically. So that's the easier way to do it, depending on where the brokerage is, right? Or where your client is. Like if your client is 2 hours away, they're not going to be able to do that. So then you would do a bill payee or a wire transfer option.
Okay.
Jen, I have a question. So how much is the deposit usually? Is it percentage of the amount of the selling price?
Yeah, depends on where you're doing the deal. So if you're in the Toronto GTA proper areas like downtown, Richmond Hill, Newmarket, Aurora, kind of the main central cores, it's 5%. of the purchase price. When you go a little bit further out, when we go towards Bowmanville, Oshawa, Clarington, or North, it gets a little lower, right? You start to see that the deposits drop down, and they're not really a percentage at that point. It's more just a flat number. You might see 5,000, 3,000, 10,000. It won't be 5% though. Traditionally, that's what we've seen. So it depends on where you're transacting, but yeah, like if you're in Niagara or places like that, it's not 5%, right? It's like $2,000, $3,000, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. But yeah, if you're in our areas, then yes, 5% if you can. You can get away with 4. You could probably squeak in 3.5 if you had to, right? If that's all your clients had in cash. But if you have a low deposit, be prepared to answer a question about that. Because as an agent, listing agent, I'm going to go, hey, why is your deposit so low? Do you guys not have money? And then as a buyer agent, I'm going to say, actually, we do. We just sold my client's property, but the money is coming from there. Here's the sale, right? Or our equity is coming from the sale of our home. Once we buy, we're going to sell that. And you can say, or there's money tied up in liquid assets. We have to move it around. It's going to take us 5 days or 10 days to get the cash. We can do an additional deposit if you'd like, right? Yeah. So again, yeah, you want to be able to have that conversation, which means you have to know what's going on with your client's money, which is why we have the deposit chat with them first, right? Yeah. And in advance, yeah.
So on the first stage, when you're talking to purchaser clients, you're talking about deposit, and are you talking about their down payment they putting and the percentage of down payment, and the most that I'm worried about, where the money coming from? You know, these all like finance questions that is it up to me as well as an agent to be aware, you know, like, are they RSP if they're first home buyer, or either they sold another property, or they have savings, or, you know?
Yeah. And the reason for that, so when you have your consult with your buyer, when you initially meet with them and pick them up as a client, really you should be having those conversations then at that point. But sometimes they won't know until they talk to the lender what that's going to look like. And then as they're going through the process, you should be getting that information from them, right? So that you know. The reason for that, it's not because we want to invade their privacy or we want to know information that, you know, they should give us. It's so that we can negotiate for them. Because as a listing agent, if I've got 4 offers, so if, you know, Jane and Tammy and Yulia and Elena all bring me an offer, and Jane can tell me about her buyers and what their down payment is and what their jobs are and what percentage they're putting down now and what all the details of their offer and what they have to sell or what their backup home is. And the other 3 can't, and Jane's short by $2,000-$3,000. I'm going to advise my clients to take Jane's offer, right? Because I know the information. It's a more solid buyer. Now that varies because, you know, if there's a $15,000 gap, then I'm going to call Jane and go, listen, we love you as an agent. We love your clients, but we need more money, right? But again, this is all on the listing side, but this is why as a buyer agent, you want to know all of the answers to these questions. And we'll get into that more when we talk about negotiating, but it's basically how you're positioning yourself to that other agent, right? The amount of times I have agents bring me offers and I ask them about their clients and they can't even tell me what they do for a living. I'm like, okay, well, like, I have no idea if your client's gonna be able to close. I have no idea what their job is, what their income is, what percentage they're putting down. What am I going to say to my client? Like, yeah, it's the only one. Let's roll the dice. You know what I mean? Like, so you don't want to be in that position. You want to be positioned in a way that allows you to represent your client at the highest level. And that's how you explain it to them. Because some people will push back and be like, well, I don't want to share my personal financial information. I'm not really asking you for your personal information. I'm just asking you for the basic information. What's your pre-approval, which we need to know to go see houses. I'm not going to show you houses if I don't know what you can spend. What's your down payment? And that just helps me in regard to negotiations. What's your employment, right? Like you have to be employed in order to even get it. And the basics, and they should be pretty confident giving you that information. But yeah, you should know this up front. Absolutely. I like to know it before I even take them out to look at houses. Because it makes me know that I'm confidently working with a buyer who's going to close a deal, right? And I don't want to spend my time if I don't know that about them. So it's a great way to flag and what we call an A+ client versus a B or a C client, right? And sometimes it's that they just don't know yet. So we have to just point them in the right direction. And that's okay too. But yeah, it helps us negotiate, most definitely. So have all of that information and know that, so that if you do get pushback from that other agent, you can answer confidently and you can position your client in the best way, right? To make them look the best in that scenario, because most of the other agents probably aren't doing that. So again, these are just leverage tactics also.
Jen, and the last question for me for today. So I know maybe it's not
okay.
maybe it's not often, but happening. But like in now, right now, economical with the COVID situation, many people they're losing jobs. You know, like maybe not now, but like let's say half a year ago. So
Yeah.
today, your client they have the pre-approval from bank, but like in 3-4 months is when the closing is coming. They push the bank push the back. You know, pushing it back with their funds. So what we do in this situation?
Well, that is a big question, and that's a big problem, because if you have a firm offer and it's not conditional, and at that point, like if 2 weeks before closing, the bank says, hey, we're not going to lend to your client's going to default on their contract. They're going to lose their deposit, and they could go into the court and get their money tied up for a long time. So your only job at that point is to find them different lending so they can close. Get them private lending, get them B lending, figure something out. The odds of that happening are not very high. And I would say that if your client, especially during COVID, we had, like when it was more predominant, we had to have these conversations. If someone was in like an industry where we knew jobs were getting lost or things like that were happening, we had to have that candid conversation with our client and say, are you confident that, you're still going to have a job in 3 months? What is that going to look like, right? Obviously, we phrase it a little bit softer than that. I'm just saying it to you guys more directly. But what's the outlook for your industry right now? Are you nervous at all about your pre-approval, about being in a strong position by the time we close in 2 months? Maybe you want to try and get an earlier closing because you know that might be a concern. Although ideally, they're not going to want to buy a house if their job is at risk anyway, right? Most likely. Now, we did have at the beginning of COVID, when we didn't know what was going to happen, and then March and April hit, we had a bigger issue with that because people got blindsided by it. And that's different, right? We had to figure that out. That being said, most people, when they're buying a home, they either have a backup plan, they're selling a home, or they hopefully can get some support from family and be able to cover, or they get second mortgages or B lending or something like that. It's not a position you want to be in. But all we can do to kind of protect against it is understand their finances at the highest level, right? So that we can guide them. And it might be in your best interest to say to somebody, maybe now's not the best time, right? I think you should wait out this market or wait out this environment, depending on what their job is. That part's a little trickier, but yeah, just tread lightly with that, right? Because their finances might still allow them to close, even if they lose employment.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so just to recap, step 1, call the buyer, call the listing agent, right? Get the information, ask all the questions that you can to understand what their expectation is, if they have any other offers, what the chattels and fixtures are, what the rental items are, what the cost of the rental items are. You're going to run through that whole list, right? Then you're going to talk to your client about the deposit and make sure they understand you have to have that money into the brokerage within 24 hours or the deal falls apart. So where's their money? Do they have it in hand? Are they doing a bank draft? Are they doing wire transfer? What's their plan? Can they go to the bank now and get a bank draft? Because if we can have a bank draft now and we can show it with our offer again, that puts us in a better position, right? So you'll notice, guys, when someone wants to buy a house, we're not just jumping to preparing the offer, right? That's not where we start. There's a lot of prep work to make sure that we're able to get this offer to come together. Once we've done all of those things, once we've talked to the agent, once we've talked to our client, we've discussed the deposit with them, then we're going to do a CMA. What's the house worth? Right? What's it actually worth? What's the market telling you? What have the recent sales in the neighborhood been? Because you guys all know right now, the market list price doesn't necessarily match the market value. And we were talking about this on our mastermind a little bit yesterday too. And Tammy, I'm looking at you right now because we were talking about homes where there's maybe not a lot of comparable sales. How do you know what it's worth? How do you know the actual value, right? Do your market research, pull all the sales in the area, pull all the sales on the street. If you can't find enough comparables, Go to the bigger pocket, go to all of Aurora and look at 4-bedroom detached homes if you can't find it in the specific community. But you need to get the data, because it's our job to protect our clients as well and make sure they make a good investment. It's not just to get an offer done, as much as that's what it sounds like it is. It's also to make sure that they're not overpaying, that if they have to sell in a year, that they can come out of it in a decent position, at least not lose money. And that's difficult. So if you have a CMA and you're having trouble with it, or it's hard to read it, get a second set of eyes on it. Ask somebody to look at it for you. Ask any of the coaches. Ask anybody in coaching. Ask any agent in our brokerage, right? They'll look at it. They'll give you feedback, because that's sometimes what we need, that is that second set of eyes. So call the listing agent, talk to your client, get all their information, do a market evaluation, all right? All before you put in an offer. So imagine what happens when you show a house, your client wants to put an offer in, and you have to get an offer on the table in 2 hours, right? That's where the stress of everything kicks into high gear. And this is why we say, don't practice on your clients, do mock offers, so that the offer part is fast. That part should be the quickest part of this whole process, putting the paperwork together, not the longest part. The longest part should be the strategizing with your clients, right? So when you're getting your offer process, those are your first steps. And then we get into, okay, I've talked to my client, I've talked to the listing agent, I know the irrevocable, I know the closing date, I know my strategy and where my client wants to start. We're going to talk about that in a second. And I know the chattels, the fixtures, the rental items, the clauses and conditions, if I have any, and I know how many other offers I'm potentially competing against. Now I'm going to go start prepping my offer, right? A lot of agents do that backwards, and then they have to fix or change a bunch of stuff, which just makes more work for yourself. Don't do that. Last week, we went through the class on how to use Authentisign. I'm not going to talk about that today. If you want to learn how to put an offer together in Authentisign in the shortcuts, you can watch that class and we will teach you all of that. But let's say now we have our offer prepared. We're ready to submit it. And our clients we've sent them everything, they've signed it, and we have it all back, right? Now the conversation, just to backtrack slightly, is our strategy. Where do we start with our offer and why? Right? There's different approaches in this situation. Depends on the market, and it depends on how many other offers there are. If you're the only offer and they're listed at market value, what's your goal price? What do you want to get the house for? Don't start at that, because then you're not going to get it at that. Go below that. So let's say hypothetically, I have clients, they want to buy Tammy's listing at $2.3 million. My CMA says it's actually worth 1.95. Sorry, Tammy. And we have to decide where to put in an offer. Well, I'll tell you, I'm not starting at 1.95. That's for sure, right? I need them to come down a lot, and they need me to come up a good bit. So we're at a disconnect right now. So what I need to do is make a strategic move where my number is close enough that they're going to deal with me and not just reject me up front. So I'm not going to offer like 1.5 because that's too big of a gap. But that is also going to push them to see where I'm coming from, that I'm not going to give them 2.3. So if I want 1.95 as my end price, then I'm probably going to start at like, I don't know, 1.7, 1 point something like that, right? 1.75. It gives me lots of room to move up, but it also shows that I'm not way out of the reach of that 1.2, which they probably would be happy taking, right? Does that make sense to everybody? So I'm always trying to position myself that I have a next move. When there's only one offer, you can do that, right? So Jane, going back to your question about what do we do in a more normal market, depends on your CMA. That's the honest answer to that. When you do your CMA, you know, if the listing's overpriced by 100,000, you got a big battle ahead of you. And you got to, especially if it's like a 1.1, 1.2 or 800, 900, 100,000 is a big gap. Right? When it's 2.3 million, 100,000 is like 10,000 to the rest of us, right? So not as big of a gap. So we approach that differently. But when you have a big gap like that 100,000 or something, then you have to kind of position yourself in a way that the other agent's going to respond to you, and that you're also going to get them to move. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah. One of the worst things you can say, and we hear it all the time, is this is an insulting offer. Agents say that all the time about offers, right? This is especially when, as the buyer agent, we bring an offer that's low. Like, oh, this is insulting. You pissed off my client, whatever. I always laugh at that. And I was like, I will actually say back to the agent, like, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize my client wanting to buy your home was insulting, right? Because why would that be insulting? This is just a starting point. We're trying to have a conversation here. Let's work together. I get that it's a little low. This is where my clients insisted on starting. Bring me a counter. Tell me what your clients are looking for. Let's see if we can find some middle ground, right? Don't attack me. Doesn't make sense, but agents do it all the time. It's like the worst script ever. This is insulting. Nobody cares that you're insulted, you know, and you shouldn't care as a buyer agent. Water off your back if someone says that to you. An offer is an offer. And if you're the only one, you have some power. So you can play with that a little bit. If there's 3 offers, you're in trouble, right? You don't have any power when you're in multiples as a buyer agent. Traditionally, it's just who's got the best offer. And those are unfortunate circumstances. It sucks, right? I know some of you have been in that before in your negotiations, and there's nothing you can do except throw your best offer and hope it gets accepted, right? Now, there's still a little strategizing you have to do, because traditionally, when there's more than one offer, when they're in multiples, whether it's 2 offers or 15 offers, they're going to ask you to improve. 99% of the time, everyone will submit their offer. There's this big scramble to get them all in, and then everyone gets a call or a text saying we're giving everyone a chance to improve, right? So always allow a little bit of room for your client to jump up to the price they actually want to pay. Don't give your best offer on the first round unless that agent says to you, we're only doing 1 round, okay? And they will. When you're on that phone call with them, and sorry, I should have said this earlier, when you're on that phone call with them and you're asking them questions, ask them, how are you going to deal with offers? Okay. They're going to answer you 1 of 2 ways. Oh, you know, we're going to do it the normal way. We'll take a look at everything. If a couple are close, we might send them back. That literally means you're going to get asked to improve your offer every time. So just plan for that. Or they're going to say it's the best offer. We don't want to mess around. My clients don't want to play games. We have a tight window. Bring us your best offer. We're not going to ask you to improve. And let me tell you, they probably are still going to ask you to improve, even with that. But on the occasion that they don't, in that scenario, put your best offer in, because I've had clients who refused to do it because they didn't believe me and they lost and they didn't get a chance to improve. So trust that if the agent's telling you best offer only, put your best offer in. But have a conversation with your client on the side to say, listen, they're telling me best offer, but if there's 2 of us and, you know, Bella's offer is 3,000 more than mine, I can almost guarantee you they're going to ask us both to improve, because that's what I would do. So what else do we have? Is this it? Or if they ask us to improve, do we have anything else? Doesn't have to be a lot, it just has to be enough, right? And sometimes that's painful. I know Dylan had a terrible experience in the springtime where he was in multiples with his clients, his buyer clients, and he was talking to the listing agent. There was 2 offers. They were like neck and neck. Our guys were at like 988 or something like that. And Dylan was talking to the agent and getting information as best he could. And he kind of gathered, the agent basically said, if you put a 9 in it, it'll be yours, right? So like a 990. So Dylan shared this information with his clients, and his clients refused to do it. Like, no, the agent's just playing us. We're probably already the best offer. It's fine. Like, there was $2,000 or something, $3,000, and they flat out refused to do it. The house sold for $990 and they lost it. Yeah, it was for Dylan, right? He was just like, it just painful, but they wouldn't listen to him, and they had the budget. They ended up paying more money for a smaller house. And they bought a beautiful house, but the market went up in between that sale and the next, and it cost them more money for less, right? Because they were trying to save $2,000. So even though your client says it's the max, a great script to help with that is to say, you know, if you're at 985 and you think you have to go to 991 or 992, say this to them. If I call you tomorrow and tell you the house sold for $992,000, how are you going to feel? And if they say, I'm going to be pissed off, then you say, great, can you go to 993? Right? Because if they can find that, they can usually find 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. There are times when they're going to say, I can't do it. Okay, I had to ask. I had to. There's a chance we're not going to get the house. I'm really sorry. Is there anything you can do to try to make it happen? No. Okay. And then they're either going to win or they're not. We don't know. That's a 50-50 toss up. But have the conversation with them, because it's not worth losing over 5,000 in a growing market, because it's going to cost them 15 or 20 by the time they buy the next house. And tell them that. Explain that to them, right? It took us a month to find this house. The market went up 20% last month. That's $10,000. So if we take another month, it's going to cost you an additional 10 on top of the 5 that you can't pay now, or you don't want to pay now. So pay 5 more now or pay 15 more in August, up to you. Right? Now we say it a little softer. I know, again, I'm being a little blunt. We don't say that directly to our clients, but that's the point you're making. And sometimes we have to give a little tough love, right?
That's all I'm thinking about. I'm like, so really, how would I actually say it like that?
Sorry, I know I just say it so bluntly, but honestly, I probably would say it similar to that, but I would soften it a little, and I would just say, you know, I know that this is hard for you guys, and I get that you're at the top of the budget. I understand that. But here's the reality of the market right now. It took us, what, a month and a half to find this home. I don't want to rush you into buying another home just to kind of buy one. But look at the stats. The market's going up 10%, 20% every month. So if we don't find another home till August or September, and we add 10 or 20%, for this same property, it's going to cost you now $1 million instead of $990. I don't want you to be in that position if you're able to do it now. Right? Same thing. Much nicer way of saying it, right? Different script, but sometimes they need to hear the tough love. Depends on the client. So you've got to feel that out as well, right? We mirror and match. So if they're aggressive and direct and short, be aggressive and direct and short back. If they're very passive and soft and gentle, wear kid gloves. Walk your way around it, right? Massage it a little bit. But don't be afraid to have the tough conversations with your clients. They'll appreciate it at the end of the day, because when they close in October and they've made $40,000, they're going to be happy they spent that extra 5, right? Versus them not being able to buy. Yeah, Tammy.
Sorry, quick question.
Mhm.
How about the ones who say, "Oh no, it's going to go down, Tammy. I know the numbers are going to drop. We're just going to wait again." I'm like, we've been looking for 7 months. I haven't seen it go down. Okay.
Yeah. No, those are always tricky, right? You can always be playful about it and kind of say, "Oh man, can I borrow your crystal ball?" or something like that.
I think that.
Yeah.
I've said that.
What I do in that situation is I usually say, you know what, I know that everyone's hoping that that's going to happen, and I get it, but let me show you the trends over the last 2 decades. Pull up Market Watch, pull out the actual trend reports, and show them the market has continuously gone up.
Yeah.
So, you know, through COVID, through the states and all the stuff that's going on, they have to recognize that their expectation or their hope of the market crashing could cost them being able to get into the market at all, which is huge, right? You can't talk sense into everybody, right? So unfortunately, that's the hard part with those clients, and you have to choose. You know, I do approach that with a little more tough love and say, look, I get that you're hopeful that that's going to happen. What is it that's making you think that? Right? Have them justify their thought to you. They usually can't. You go, okay, well, here's what we're seeing. Here's the actual stats. So I would hate to have this home become out of your reach, because if you can't buy this townhouse at $1 million now, and it's going to be 1.2 next spring, you're going to be buying a condo. That's going to be your only option. Is that what you want to buy? No. Okay. What happens if the market crashes after I buy and I bought at the peak? Well, real estate's about holding, right? Our market crashes are short. So the market will crash. And then as we see it every time, it shoots back up because demand in our area is so prominent. So you wait it out. Real estate's about holding. It's not about short-term flipping traditionally, unless you're flipping purposefully. That's different, right? So you have to have that conversation. And with some people, you have to say, you know what? I don't know what to tell you. You either have to trust in what the market is doing right now or roll the dice. But if you roll the dice, I can promise you it's going to cost you more money. I'm happy to do the deal with you in the spring, no problem. But it's going to be about 100,000 more when you buy this house, if not more, right? So those guys are tough, Tammy. Honestly, we had clients that were selling their properties in 08, 09 because they thought that the market was going to crash after the US crashed. They cashed out and waited. They waited a year to 2 years, and they can't get back into the market. right? So what they owned before has gone up exponentially in value. They've lost $400,000 or $500,000 and they can't buy what they used to own. So strategically speculating on a downturn in a market is a very poor investment strategy. Buying in a market that you know and understand right now is the best investment strategy, because at least you know what you're getting into, right? What if the market goes up 40% between now and then? Look what happened last year. You willing to risk 40% increase for a 20% downturn, or whatever those numbers would look like, right? So there's lots of ways you can play that, but some people are just too stubborn. You're not going to get through to them. So you just go, okay, call me in the spring. Let's talk again then. And don't spend a lot of time on them, right? Unless they get serious. But yeah, those guys are trickier. But going back to the offer negotiation. So once you have your offer prepared and your client has signed it, and you know how many offers you're competing with, if you are competing, and you have your price strategy in place, right? So again, price strategy, guys, what does your CMA tell you the market value is? Now, keep in mind, in a market such as ours, the last CMA max value is not what this one's going to sell for. It's going to sell for more than that by whatever percentage growth we're seeing, right? So allow a buffer of 5,000, 6,000, 10,000, whatever that might be. If it's the next month since the last sale, you might be able to look at the stats and go, what has it been going up month over month in this pocket? Because that's what you're going to have to allow for, especially in multiples. So a lot of agents make that mistake. They do their CMA and they go, it's 960. And then that's it. They're like, we're not spending more than 960. Well, that 960 is probably going to be 975 or 980 by the time you get the house, right? So prepare your clients for that. That's why we do a CMA to begin with. And if you're not sure, just look at the trend. Look at the last 3 or 4 sales of similar properties. How much did each one go up? There was one point, I think it was in 2017, houses were going up 100,000 a month. It was insanity. So if you didn't buy in April, you were spending 100,000 more for the same house in May, right? Now we haven't seen that market in a long time. January was like that. This last January was crazy too, right? Wasn't quite 100,000, but it was 50 to 60,000. That's significant. So look at the trends so you can advise your client properly, right? What's it going up every time there's a sale? Is it 5,000, 10,000, 20,000? Depends on the price, depends on the product, and advise your client what to expect. Part of our job as buyer's agents to get a deal accepted is to keep our buyers on board, right? To keep them on track. And this is how we do that. Set their expectations in advance. So talk to them about the numbers. Don't let them tell you what they want to do. Advise them. Give them the data and let them make an educated decision. At the end of the day, ultimately, it's their call. We have to do what they tell us to do. But we can give them the information to make a better and more educated decision. That's going to allow them to put their best foot forward. So like I said, if you're the only offer, go in below what you want to pay and then negotiate back and forth with a strong positioning of your buyers. Here's their pre-approval, here's their information, here's when their closing is, we gave you your closing date, so on and so forth, right? And then it's just about who the other agent is on the other side. You're going to play ping pong or you're going to play golf, right? One of the two. You're either going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, or it's a couple of strategic shots and you're done. Depends on the agent though. So that's why we want to feel out that agent so we know what to expect going in. And oftentimes an agent will tell us, listen, I don't want to do this, but my client needs to go back and forth. It's their personality. If they tell you that, listen to them. They're not telling you that for their own sake. They don't want to do it any more than you do. But if they know that their client needs to feel that they fought to get their price and they tell you that, give it to them, right? Go in a little lower, give smaller jumps, whatever it takes. Don't just go to their price, because then they're going to come back and ask you for more. That's not benefiting your client, right? When you're in multiples, again, like I said, if it's only one offer and that's it, you're going to give your best offer with a little buffer, hopefully, for your clients in case it comes back. If it's multiples and they're saying we're going to do a second round, you want to give a medium offer, right? And what I mean by that is you don't want to be at list, because that's not realistic, but you don't want to be at your max. So if the list price is $799 and you know your max is $875, you're probably going to offer about $850, $860. You want to be in the top, but you don't want to be the best and you don't want to be at your max, because then in the second round, when a lot of agents have gone in the max at the first round and can only jump 5,000 or 7,000, you can jump 20 to 30 and hopefully jump over everybody else, right? That's a little bit of a better strategy. And you can also ask the agents. That agent's going to call you and say, we're asking everyone to improve. Say, awesome, how am I stacking up right now? Where do I stand? How am I stacking up right now? Or where do I stand? So most agents are going to tell you, you're in the top, you're in the middle, you're in the bottom. Now you have a range of, okay, well, if I think it's worth 870 and I'm in the middle at 850, that means most of us are at 850. Maybe there's one agent at 865 or 870, somewhere like that. Majority in the middle and the handful at the bottom. So I need to go to like 880, 885 right now to get this, because I have to jump over that best offers improvement, right? So it's where the strategy of understanding how it works comes into play. And you'll see this a lot as a listing agent. You see how the agents move and you can see the strategies that they're using. Most of them don't use strategy. They put in their best offer and they give you an improvement of 5,000 to 10,000 consistently. Then you have one or two who will give you, they'll either come in at the top and do another big jump, or they come in the middle and they do a big jump to get to the top. Those are the ones who are saving their clients a little bit more money, right? So when it comes to negotiating, those are the factors you have to consider. How am I positioning my client? How are the offers being handled? And how do I get the price that I want, right? As long as the price you want is in line with market value, you should be able to get there. But you have to position yourself in the right way. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, so jumping back before we flip to questions really quickly, when you are submitting your offer, guys, there's a process, right? You want to register your offer. First of all, go to Broker Bay through Treb if you want. So you go to online appointments and there's a register your offer part, or email it to the brokerage, the listing brokerage's front desk, email them your 801 and ask them to register your offer, or call them. But always register your offer, because you want it on file that you submitted it in case anything does seem funny. And you want to know how many other offers there are. And we're only obligated to tell how many offers there are to other registered offers legally. Now, agents, we disclose it to everybody because we want as many offers as possible. But the RICO rule is it only has to be disclosed to other registered offers. So the minute your offer comes back from your client fully signed, register your offer. You only need to submit an 801 to register it. You don't have to submit the whole offer. But you want to make sure that the listing agent's aware and the brokerage is aware that you have an offer on the table, okay? So once it comes back signed, register the offer. The listing agent's going to call you at that point, let you know, okay, hey, we're going to review them at 8 o'clock, send it to this email by 7:30 or whatever that looks like. Come to my office if it was in person, which really not anymore, or we're doing it on Zoom, which we hear sometimes, but that's the first step. If your offer isn't registered and you miss out, that's on you. And don't rely on the listing agent to register your offer. The worst thing you can do is just email your offer to the listing agent and be like, well, hope you got it, right? You're not helping anybody by doing that. So register it, find out when he's presenting the offer, send it about 20 to 30 minutes before the actual presentation, because you don't want that agent to leverage it against anybody else. So don't send it too early, right? And then from there, he or she is gonna give you directions on what happens next. What usually happens next is that they present it to their clients. Takes a long time usually. That part's generally slow for some reason. And then eventually you get a text or a phone call or an email back saying your offer's been accepted, your offer's been rejected, or we're asking everybody to improve. One of three things. Prepare your clients for that. But you want to be in engagement with that agent so that they keep you in the loop as to what needs to happen. Because when you build rapport, and by doing all of these things, that's what we're doing, that agent's going to throw you some bones that they wouldn't throw somebody that they didn't like as much or they don't have any relationship with. That's why we do it, right? We're going to give you a little extra feedback. We're going to give you a little extra push. They're going to say, you know what, your offer is looking great, but that home inspection is really giving you some trouble. Great, let me get the home inspection out of my offer if I can, right? The very least shorten it, because now they've indicated to you, my number is probably pretty solid, but my conditions are getting in the way, right? So you can do one of two things: pay for the condition, which means give lots more money, or get the condition out. And then you have to have that conversation with your client. Negotiation, guys, it's all communication. It's all it is. How good are you at it? That's what the question is. If you're not communicating with the other agent, you're shooting yourself in the foot, because then it just comes down to what's on paper and they don't care because they have enough offers that they have what they want guaranteed in this type of a market. In a one-on-one situation, Jane, going back to your initial question, that's a little different because now they have to negotiate back and forth a little bit. So you have a little more sway there and you can push back a little bit more. But odds are we're not going to see that market for a little while. So when it comes to submitting your offer and then your strategies around it and how to negotiate, that's what you need to know to get started. And then it comes with practice. After that, it's just keep going. Even if you lose, you're learning, right? Every time you lose, you're learning something. You're getting more used to the process. It's getting more, it doesn't feel good. I'm not saying keep losing. Nobody wants to do that, but you are going to get better every time you lose. And you are going to get more confident. The reason I can say things so bluntly and so callously in some ways, and I don't mean them callously, I did care very much, they come out that way, is because I've done this so many times that I just know how it's going to go. And I can tell you, I say this to my clients all the time when we're in multiples, especially when there's like 8 and 9 and 10 offers. I'll say to them, here's what's going to happen. There's 8 offers. There's going to be 3 to 4 that are at list price, under list price, or around list price. There's going to be another 2 or 3 that are in the middle, and there's going to be 1 or 2 that are at the top. It's the same every single time. 1 or 2 things is going to happen. The 1 or 2 at the top are going to be so far spread from everyone else that they're going to take it. And we have to make sure that we don't leverage our offer against that. So we have to try and be in the top, or one of the ones in the middle is going to have the ability to jump up and surpass everybody else and take it. One of those 3 people is winning this offer. So our job is to be one of those 3 people. So if we want to go in at the bottom, it's not really a great use of anybody's time, and all we're going to do is drive up the price. If we want to be in the middle, we have to know that we have a big jump ahead of us. So don't freak out when I come back and tell you, okay, let's jump 40,000, because that's where we're at. And if we want to be in the top, we go in strong, but we leave a buffer of about 10,000 for improvement. Up to you guys how you want to proceed. But I can say that because it's the same every damn time. That's what it looks like. I've seen it a million times, right? That's always the pattern. There's 2 at the top, there's 3 to 4 in the middle, and there's 2, 3, or 4 in the bottom. Majority are clustered in the middle to the bottom. So when you're a buyer's agent and there's 10 offers, don't freak out. 10 offers is the same as 4 offers, right? It's the same as 3 offers because you only got the 3 in the top. Once you pass 5, it's all the same. Doesn't matter if there's 20 or there's 4 or 3. It's the same, right? So people get stressed by the number, right? 20 offers is overwhelming, and it's like, oh my God, it's going to go over by 300,000. Probably not. Will it go over by 50 more than the last recent sale? Possibly, and you have to be aware of that, right? But it's not going to go over by 300,000 more or 200,000 more. So look at your CMA and then figure out where you think it's going to end up based on the market conditions, and then strategize with your clients. Does that make sense? All right, we got about 5 minutes left. So any questions? I know that hour went quickly. Any questions, guys, on all that stuff? No? Sounds pretty easy, right? In theory, it's easy.
No, this is really good. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And guys, the only way to get better is to practice, right? So don't be afraid of it. And like we said, like we say this all the time, send us an offer and we'll review it. If you want us to counter you, if you want to practice your negotiation, tell us and we'll do that too. We'll counter you on the property, right? So let us know what you need and we'll do it. And feel free to do it as often as you want, but practice so that when it comes to the actual act of doing it in real life, you have a better chance of getting the deal. But hopefully this gave you some guidance on how to structure and position yourselves a little bit stronger, right? And then also the steps you take to do it. So, yeah, that's it.
I have a question again.
Yeah, no problem.
If you, as a listing agent, right, like you have multiple offers and you have to present it to the client, and aren't you, so usually client probably willing to take the highest one, right?
Yeah.
But aren't you as an agent will suggest to take a more reliable one, you know, like the one, let's say these guys, they are working in the office, whatever. Another offer that is a bit lower, he's a doctor, right? Like family, like something like that. Yeah. Or they more like 100% they will close and they will get funding, you know, things like that. Do you consider that? Do you make points to your client like that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why we talk about how to position yourself as a buyer agent. So you make yourself more favorable, talk about their employment and things like that, right? But yes, as a listing agent, it depends on the agent. There's some agents who don't care. They just look at the best number on paper or the cleanest offer and they accept that. As a listing agent, I would say, and we teach you guys, it's our job to make sure the deal closes, not just that we get an accepted offer. So we're going to do some qualifying. I'm going to ask every buyer agent about their clients. What's their job? How long have they been there? What's their pre-approval? Who's their lender? What percentage are they? I'm asking those questions, which is how I'm determining, okay, who's a more safe bet. But money is going to talk at the end of the day, because your client isn't going to turn down 20,000 because one person's a doctor and one person's not, right? What they are going to do though is, turn down 10,000 or 5,000 if one of them has conditions and one doesn't, because there's more risk there. Or if one of them, they have a low deposit and they're only putting down 10%, and the other person has a high deposit and 20%, they're the better bet. So you're going to go with them. You're not going to risk 900,000 for 5,000. But oftentimes once that number goes above 10, sellers, it's harder for them to let go of that number because it's a bigger number, right? So that's why as buyer agents, we're always trying to show our strengths. My clients have,
Sorry, in this particular case you're describing, so are you asking if, let's say, the doctor, doctor offer is a bit less or his deposit is less than others, but in that case, are you asking to bump it up a little bit, the doctor offer?
So when I get my first round of offers as a listing agent and I review them all, and I know that my top, I don't really care about the bottom politely, I'm glad they're there. They're helping me get more money, but they're not going to buy the house. So I'm not going to spend as much time with them. But my top 3 or 4 offers, my middle and my top group, I'm going to talk to each of them and say, hey, we're going to give everyone a chance to improve. I just want to let you know right now, you're kind of sitting in the middle of the pack. Your condition is hurting you a little bit and your deposit's a little bit low. So, if you can do something about that stuff in your improvement round, that's probably going to help you. So I'm not disclosing anything about any other offer, but I am indicating what they need to do to be competitive, because I want them to know so that I get what I want, right? So I'm throwing them some guidelines without telling them or disclosing anything. And I'll do that to my top 3 or 4 offers, absolutely. But the rest of them, like if I have 10 offers, I'm not having that conversation with all 10 people. The lower guys, I'm going to say, look, you know what? Really appreciate you coming out. Just to let you know, for the sake of your time and your client's time, you're really not that competitive right now. You're in the bottom of the pack. I am giving everyone a chance to improve. You'd have to make a really significant improvement to be competitive. So up to you what you want to do. Talk to your clients and let me know. I'm giving them an out because I don't need to spend really much more time with them. But based on RICO rules, I can't tell them not to come back in. I have to give them the option. So I have to strategically phrase it. So that's what you always say. So yeah, you are positioning as a listing agent in order to get what you want from the better offers. Absolutely. Yeah.
But you cannot disclose the numbers. I mean, like even saying,
no.
Can you bump it up for 20 grand, right? Like you cannot tell this.
You can't say that. You'll often hear, there's what you can and can't say and what people do say. You'll often hear, I need it to have a 9. I need it to have an 8, right? So then okay, I got to get to 980. I got to get to 990. Agents say stuff like that. Sometimes you'll say, like I had an agent once, it was actually pretty clever of them in a way. They said, they couldn't tell me what the price was, but they wanted us to get the property. So they said, go look at the sale at number 85.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just like, okay, pulled it up, saw the price, gave them an extra 2,000-3,000 and we got the place. Right. So if it's somebody you really want to get it, we're not supposed to do that. Let me be clear. I'm gonna have to cut this part of the recording out to do some editing. I know. I'm gonna edit this, guys. This is not gonna be in the video that goes to everybody else. But we're not allowed to do that. But you can say things in a way where you're not really disclosing anything and you're not giving information, but you're guiding people to where you need them to go. Up to them if they do it or not, but you can kind of give some inference. Let's put it that way. Although you're not supposed to, which is why I have to edit this, but we do. Everybody does, because that's how we get our clients the best deal, right? So there's the RICO rules and there's the gray area, and we sometimes have to step slightly into the gray area. but we still want to protect ourselves. So we're never going to disclose what's in another offer. We're never going to give a number, and we're never going to give a percentage ever, because those things are clear indications. Everything else, the person has to read between the lines. We're not really disclosing anything, right? So be cautious, tread lightly. If you are going to try to do that, be very careful how you phrase it, and do not put it in writing at all. Whatever you do, that's a phone call, and only a phone call. Okay. But that's listing side, which is a different class anyway. But great question. Yeah. And so it answers back to our conversation of how we position ourselves as a buyer, right? Because when we think about being a listing agent, what are you looking for? And then how do you get your buyer to look like that?
Okay,
Right?
thank you. Yeah, and one question related to the to purchaser client. So
Mhm.
when are you getting all information from listing agent for your buyer, right? Before preparing the offer.
Yeah.
If something in the house, let's say the walkout basement, right, that is rented, and do I ask the all permission, like permits, you know, like that, if there is if it was redone or something in the house was like reconstructed, you know, all this, do I
If the
request the permit?
ask for permits, if the current sellers did the work, then I would ask for permits. If it's permit required, right? Like if they renovated their kitchen, you don't need a permit to do that. It's aesthetic. But if they add a walkout, or they drop the basement, or they do things like that, then yeah, you would want to see that the permits have been closed out by the city. So you would request those permits, those closed permits, in those specific instances. If it was done like 30 years ago and not by these owners, they're probably not going to have the permits. So you could ask, but your buyer at that point is just assuming that they were done appropriately, because they're still there and they're still existing and there's no issues. And it's pre-existing to the previous seller. So they can't really provide you any guarantees on that anyway, right?
Okay.
So dependent, yeah. But new work, renovations, additions, anything like that, absolutely permits, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, guys, any other questions? You guys ready to go win some multiple offers now? Go get them. Yeah, it's hard, guys. I'm not going to lie to you. In this market, you just got to keep going to bat. That's all you can do. Eventually it will work out, but keep going. In a more balanced market, Jane, going back to your original question at the beginning, it's much easier. Buyers get more wins. It's easier to negotiate. It's more fun to negotiate because it's actually a back and forth, and there's not as much stress. It's just kind of conversational. And that's a much nicer way to get your client a house than the market where we're just throwing out the most money we have and hoping it's enough, right? It is a little more challenging. That being said, be prepared to see that aggressive market come the fall. So practice now while it's a little quieter, right? And work on your skills. Yeah, Ula, go ahead.
I'm just thinking, so in negotiating with the numbers, the actual documentation and you adding another 10,000. So how many, like, I know it's really the documentation part of it, but how would I change that number? Do I do it right in DocuSign again?
Yeah. So what you're going to do is upload they're going to ask you to improve. So take your first signed copy, upload it as a document into AuthentiSign in the transaction kit for that property. And then when you go into the design where you drag and drop the initials, there's a markup tool. So you can cross out the old price and write in the new price, and then just drop your initials.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
No problem. All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining me. I hope that was helpful and gave you some insight, or at least a little structure to how to prepare when you're working with buyers and offers. Tony, I know you asked if we're going to be doing a listing class soon, and yes, we are. I think it'll probably be, because I know next week is Command, and then the week after that is how to broker load your listing properly. So it probably won't be till the very end of August or September, but we will get to it, absolutely. Yeah. And any hints on how we can practice negotiation before a real situation, Bala? Yeah, reach out to another agent and ask them to role play with you, send offers back and forth to each other, pick a property. One person's the listing agent, one person's the buyer agent, and practice. Or send it to one of the coaches and let us know you want to do counter offers, and we'll do it back and forth with you. The best way is role play. Truthfully, it just is. Scripts are the same thing, right? Just practice actually doing it. All right. Have a great day, guys. We'll see you in the morning.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.